Okay, welcome to the first Bat Fridays here on Superman Comic a Day, as we are now tackling every Friday a different Batman comic, mainly Detective Comics and Batman. Aren't you excited? I know I am. And there is no better place to start with Batman than Detective Comics number 27, The Case of the Chemical Syndicate. This is the first Batman story ever. So this is the first original story. It is credited to Robert Kane, not Bob Kane yet. Oddly, R-O-B apostrophe T, Kane. Never seen that spelling before, really weird. But if you watched my last video, you would know that it's actually Bill Finger as the writer. And honestly, I don't 100% believe that Bob did the art here. I can't. He's just too much of a liar. Doing some research, I found a bit of a list of who was doing the art at what times, but they haven't been very comprehensive, unfortunately. I know Jerry Robertson is one of the first to do it, especially in the first issue of Batman, which is like 10 issues away. But I'm not 100% certain who was doing the art at this time if it wasn't Bob Kane. It could have been Bob Kane, I just don't trust that it was Bob Kane. So right away we meet Commissioner Gordon. No first name yet. And he's hanging out with his young socialite friend, which is a very strange thing for a police commissioner to be hanging out with, if you think about it, even for that time. Why is he hanging out with a young socialite friend? I mean, if he's giving money to, like, say, the police charity or something, he possibly would go meet with him, but why would, like, 50-year-old Gordon, he looks old, be hanging out with young Bruce Wayne? They shouldn't even be in the same circles. Sherlock didn't even hang out with Lestrade. Gordon is already talking about the mysterious Batman. That's Hyphen Man. I'm not 100% certain when that hyphen goes away, so we will be watching that over the next couple of weeks. So we already actually know about Batman, which is a really weird contrast to Superman. As I've explained before, Superman in the beginning is an urban legend, and usually adaptions of Batman make Batman kind of an urban legend. No one really believes that a man dressed as a bat is going around beating criminals. But here, they already know about him and are talking about him. So he seems to actually exist and not be an urban legend, which is strange. You would think the reverse would be true to these two characters. It works for Batman. It does not work for Superman. Gordon receives a call. There doesn't seem to be any existence of Alfred yet. So we get Gordon and Bruce Wayne in the first issue. Wow, that's already a little more detailed than the first Action comic book story of Superman. And this is going to continue. A chemical plant owner by the name of Lampert has been murdered because this is Batman and he's based on pulp stories, so this is going to be a murder mystery. You don't really get many murder mysteries with Superman because that's not what they're going for. Lampert has been stabbed. He was found with his son. His son's fingerprints are all over the knife, so it doesn't look good for Lampert Jr. Gordon just lets Bruce Wayne come along with him like it's a freaking ride-along. How much money does he give to the police? It doesn't even say he's a millionaire, it just says he's a socialite, which I guess assumes that he has a lot of money. Still, why would Gadabat Bruce Wayne want to go to a crime scene of all things? Lambert claims he didn't do it, he found his father like that, and he touched the knife, and that's why his fingerprints are all over it. Lambert's final words were contract, which is not surprising for a rich man's final words. I mean, there's always an incomplete contract somewhere. Lambert Jr. recalls that he had a contract with 3 men, and Alfred Stryker, Paul Rogers, and Steve Crane. No other details about this contract are explained. He just had a contract with these 3 men. So as the plot sort of starts, we get into a problem. This story in Detective Comics is only like 6 pages. And what has been kind of my major complaint throughout Superman is for a 1-story comic to be told in 14 pages is a lot. So you have to condense a lot of stuff, and especially when the story becomes heavy, it's really hard to follow because how many characters are throwing at you and how many motives, it doesn't work quite well. Well, we have the same problem here. There is just too much story for 6 pages. Batman gets better at the whole cliffhanger and having multiple issues tell a story, which these writers really need to figure out very quickly because it's just not very interesting to read a story that's being condensed in like a few pages. It can get hard to follow when it becomes condensed. And I had to reread sections of this comic because I was having trouble following a plot that's not exactly all that complicated. It throws a lot at you with the explanation in a little amount of time. It just so happens Steve Crane is calling at that moment. He is worried because he has received a threat like Lampert did. And seeing that Lampert has died, he is now worried he's about to die. Which is a fair worry because a man comes right in and shoots him. Man, that death threat was instant. As the man has a piece of paper in his hand and is escaping out the window with his partner, I'm actually not sure why he needed a partner other than a lookout. The silhouette of a pointed-ear man stands on the rooftop watching them. It's Batman! Hyphenated. Don't forget that hyphen, like Spider-Man. Batman already kind of looks like Batman. His ears are a little weird, but he looks like Batman. The gray costume, the pointy ears, the black cape and cowl. It does look more like the cloth costume you would see in the Batman serials that don't look very good, especially how it lies on his face and almost is covering his eyes most of the time. No way he has peripheral vision in that cowl. Though he doesn't strike terror in these criminals quite yet, he does kick their ass pretty quickly. He just kind of rushes in and takes them out. I always kind of complain with Superman that the mobsters don't make quite a challenge, but there's something fun about the build-up to Batman showing up and just beating the crap out of these guys that works in a way that watching bullets bounce off Superman as the mobsters are flabbergasted just doesn't. Batman retrieves the piece of paper. Back to the whole murder plot. Paul Rogers arrives to the house or mansion of Alfred Stryker. It's funny that we don't actually have Alfred in this comic, but there is a guy named Alfred. I think Bill Finger had that name stuck in his head. Paul's let in by Alfred's manservant instead of Alfred being the manservant. Well, that's a weird sentence in my head while talking about Batman. The manservant immediately leads Paul into a gas chamber, which he claims he uses on guinea pigs, but it's going to work perfectly fine in killing Paul. So Alfred's the one behind all this. Not that Alfred, Alfred Stryker, not Alfred Pennyworth. See, this is confusing, but before the gas chamber can completely encompass Paul Rogers, Batman runs right into the lab, picking up a wrench and getting into the glass gas chamber. He stops the gas right away and uses a wrench to break through the glass. He sort of has the utility belt, but he's not going to have the gadgets yet. But he's very quick on his feet. I mean, that was a build-up to a death and Batman saving him almost instantly. I'm actually really surprised at how well-paced this comic is. Like, I really do enjoy the action, but it could be longer. Hell, the 14 pages that Action Comics gives Superman would have been so much helpful here with this story. After escaping, he easily knocks out the manservant. Just a lot of punching from Batman. The manservant does pull a gun on Batman, but Batman just easily punches him out. I'm really surprised at how much I'm enjoying this first Batman story. In Grant Morrison's sort of autobiography, Super Gods, they talk about the first issue of Superman and Batman and kind of compare them, making the argument that this comic of Batman's really redundant and not really anything new. By the end of it, they don't get the point of the story. While the first story of Superman is introducing something new and the character is trying to better the world, I will agree with the idea that the first Superman story is a new idea. It does work that way. I will argue that Bill Finger's writing is better than Jerry Siegel's. I think Bill knew what he was doing. I think Bill knew what kind of story he was telling while Jerry was still trying to figure it out. It takes a couple issues to sort of figure out what a Superman comic is. Also, the art here, and if it is all Bob Kane, I really hate to say anything good about it, but the art here is just leaps and bounds above the first issue of Superman. You can tell what's going on, your eye darts from each panel, and it's really clear what's happening. The characters look a bit cartoony, like very newspaper strip kind of coloring on these characters. Which is a minor complaint, but you would not think that from the tone of a Batman comic. It's really impressive how much I kind of enjoy reading this more than I actually enjoyed reading the first Superman comic, which I've never actually read this comic before, so this is my first time. And like, wow, yeah, it's quite pleasant. So now Alfred Stryker comes in and it's time for the reveal. It turns out that the contract Alfred had signed with the other three had him paying out to own Apex Chemical. Apex Chemical is one of these chemical companies that are in Batman in the early years. I believe it actually changes his name to Ace, where the Joker ends up being created. He falls into the bat, turns into the Joker, depending on who he is, because we don't actually know who the Joker was before he was the Joker, except being the Red Hood, and that's a whole complicated story now. So Stryker is paying off each man to own Apex outright, but he's gotten tired of paying them and just decided to kill them all so he could own it. That's basically the plot. That's why everything has been happening, and for some reason I had to reread that explanation like 2 or 3 times to understand exactly why everything was happening. Just more pages, less condensed dialogue. Now with all this revealed, we can actually end the comic. Batman punches Stryker so hard he gets thrown through a railing like Superman's greatest weakness, being thrown through railings or from behind, and he falls into a vat of acid, which we assume kills him, so Batman's already kind of killing people right here. But he basically does what creates the Joker, Like, from the very beginning, he does the thing he should never be doing because it leads to his greatest supervillain. Don't knock them into the vats. Miss the vat, Batman. Try to punch them away from the vats. That's the smart move. And the comic ends with Gordon calling Bruce Wayne to tell him what happened with the whole case, only for us to see that Batman is in Bruce Wayne's room. The narration explains that he is Batman. Without that narration and already knowing that Bruce Wayne is Batman, I would have just assumed that Batman was hanging out in Bruce Wayne's bedroom waiting for him to arrive. That's kind of how it's framed. We don't seem like take off the mask and reveal that he's Bruce Wayne. We're just told that Batman's in the room, and that's why he is Bruce Wayne. There had to be a better way of doing it. So that is it for DC Comics number 27, The Case of the Chemical Syndicate. Wasn't really much of a chemical syndicate if we think about it. And I pleasantly enjoyed it. It's definitely not the best Batman story, but it gets across what Batman is pretty effectively in the first issue in the 1939. So that is it for Bat Fridays here on Superman Comic A Day, and this is it for Superman Comic A Day for this week. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon to get notifications when a new video goes up. I do this Monday through Friday. And if you want Batman-related content, I do that on Friday. So join me next week, same bat time, same bat YouTube channel. Bye.